Welcome, Don. Glad you're here, and welcome everybody to Mind Shifters Radio. Delighted that we get to enter this conversation one more time, and we've, we're still working through what's happening. Welcome, Melanie. And the app seems to be behaving a little better today, although I still don't seem to be able to get into comments or callers. But if you want to hit, if you've got a thought, if you've got a question, an idea for us, why don't you go ahead and hit the call button, and let's see if we can get the caller to work. Yes, I have. I just restarted the app, and I see your comments, sweetie. So, all right. Well, welcome everybody. Delighted that you're here. We'll keep playing with this thing till we get it right. And I was just about on the edge of having the worksheet ready to go. Jean and I actually spent about 3 hours together on it this morning, going through and doing a final proofing. And there's still I've added a couple of extra pieces, so I don't know. We may have to do another show at some point because I added some pieces to the power person worksheet that we didn't cover. In any event, we were talking about the idea in the Aramaic language of Satan, and that in Aramaic, the word Satan is not some dude with a red suit, a tail, and a pitchfork. The word Satan means the resistor, one who misleads. And when I recognize that, then I get to see when I'm in resistance. And we're talking literally physiologically. When the system tightens, it goes into resistance. It moves away from conducting the energy it has received properly into restricting the flow of energy. If you're in the electronic world and you put a resistor in a circuit, you put a resistor in a circuit in order to cut down the flow of energy. Well, it's the same thing that happens when people tighten up their bodies, lock up their jaws, tighten the back, tighten the buttocks, whatever. And this would literally correlate to, in Aramaic, the idea of Satan. Again, the resistor, one who misleads. And when it's time to move out of that, then, as I said yesterday, people will move mountains. And as long as the resistor is in control, people will build mountains in order to avoid what it is they need to deal with. And what happens is when I forgive, when I apply forgiveness, and remember that we're not talking about letting anybody off the hook. That's a whole false, it's like a false flag operation we've been drawn to, of letting people off the hook and thinking that we're forgiving. But forgiveness is how I go inside myself. And when I apply that tool to what drives my addiction, then I'm ready to be freed from that energy locked into my body, my mind, my nervous system, and showing up over and over and over again in the perceptual constructs of my mind. And that's the point at which I physiologically come back into alignment. Remember, yesterday I talked about the antenna. There's 100% signal strength out there. If all the arms of the antenna are bent and it's turned backward, I might get 5% of the signal through. Not much energy flow in the antenna. As I correct, as I bend the arms back where they belong, as I turn in the antenna 180 degrees, all of a sudden I get to the point where there's 100% energy flow in the antenna. That's when I get a perfect picture and perfect sound on my TV. That's when I take the things that are out of alignment in me out of my structure. That's when I come into proper resonance with, and that's what has to happen with the TV antenna. In the ancient scriptures, you talked about in him, in the creator's energy field, we live, move, and have our being. We're designed, where there are two similar energy fields, there is always an exchange of energy. Literally, when the atomic magnetic structure of two systems are the same, and one of them is vibrating and the other one's not, at least in the external sense of vibration, observable vibration, then there's a transfer of energy between the two. We're designed as receptors for love to be the antenna. Our physiology is designed to be the antenna that receives the direct input of conscious, active, present love, or what was called the mind of Christ. That's what we're designed for. And that's the only true mind I need to have enter into my life, my body, and my nervous system. And in order to do that, I have to surrender and transform everything from my generations. Elsewise, I'll tend to live my life in the desert. You remember that metaphor of the desert, and that's all it is a metaphor. It wasn't about going into a literal, hot, 35 square mile sandy place. The desert, 40 years, it was about being in that unconscious condition of resistance, locked into whatever was stored in the body-mind unit, unresolved from the generations. And you'll remember, if you read that passage, the way that they got out of the desert was what? The old generation had to die off. Each individual has to address, and the word generation has as its root, genaria, means cause. You have to address every cause in your structure that is unlike your true nature, love, and apply forgiveness to it. Elsewise, it resides, it is resident in your tissue structure, carbon-based memory. The carbon atom has 6 electrons, 6 protons, 6 neutrons. What goes against the activity of the mind of active love in you, the mind of Christ, the Antichrist, 666? What's stored in carbon-based memory? Based in hostility or fear. And when I face and forgive those generational patterns, then I'm freed from the desert. And what happens then? I go to the promised land. What's the promised land? It's another metaphor. It's not about a place of milk and honey. It's entering into conscious co-creation. You no longer go to the world in order for the world to serve you up an experience, which would mean it would be from the past. You go to the world as a creator and you create an experience. So once you do that piece of work, you're freed from the desert and you're no longer looking for experiences in carbon-based memory. It doesn't become, oh, how can I have another exciting experience? How can I have another titillating experience? How can I get another sensation? No, you deliver the energy of being into your physiology. You fuel your physiology with that conscious, active, present love. And in so doing, you bring a fully formed creative self to create in the world, rather than just find experiences from the past in the world. So it's a totally different process. Remember that if you're going to find something in the world, it had to already be there. All experiences the world can feed to you are from the past. They're just replicate energetic patterns. And they can be fun and they can be exciting, but it's nothing like being a conscious creator and originating into the creation, that which you are attuned to from the higher level. The idea of repent has been, given this sin connotation and all the garbage of fear, where all the word means is to turn your thinking another way. So do we look to the world and what's already been expressed and source information from there and then get locked into and stuck in a replicate life? Or do we originate and bring into the world something new? Replicating from the past means death. There is no life in the past. When you function from that state, everything changes. You become a conscious creator. That's the promised land. That's what you and I are designed for. So you no longer play out other people's felt experiences, but you create from this state where those experiences you might be pursuing were created initially, originally, and you initiate it in and through your own higher faculties. Symptoms mean that your energy field is inviting you to do another level of work. What does symptoms look like? It might be fear, and it might be sadness, and it might be rage, and it might be blame, and it might be pointing the finger at somebody, and it might be totally focused in the world. That doesn't mean don't focus in the world. That doesn't mean don't take care of business. But do you do it from being, or do you do it from an hostility or fear-based mind? The objective of this world is work is to free you from that hostility and fear-based mind so that you function truly as the human being you were designed to function as. So this is all an invitation to another level of to do another level of your work. And I love what Mother Teresa said. She said, "You may not do great things, but you can do small things with great love. You can come into the world as a creator. If you have no hostility or fear in you, you will face anything that's going on in the world, any trauma, any tragedy, and there will be no hostility or fear felt in you because there is no hostility or fear left in you. Then you are empowered to bring the healing essence of active love into the world of trauma, into the world of pain, into the world of insanity." You remember Yeshua described this state. He said, "I'm in this world, but I'm not of it. Whatever my perceptual mind shows me, pardon me, I bring active love to. I don't allow it to run me." And in that state, the whole game is changed. And I think we may have a correction on the call-in uh, line. And so if you have a thought for us, please push that call button, and let's see if we can have a conversation. And I'm going to test. Stay with me. I'm going to do a little test here. Especially, I hope somebody's pushed the call button. I can't see it, but I may have a formula for being able to see it. Nope. Okay. So the invitation is for each person to do the work of healing, of owning whatever's going on inside of them, and doing whatever work is required to clean up the generational patterns. And so each tool that we have is designed to bring the real work of healing, and healing means removal of what never belonged and the integration of what does belong. at least according to Yeshua. And yes, the ego mind will say too hard a saying, and hopefully we're bringing it into the world in a form that people can hear and can make sense of. So remember that what you're looking for is what is looking. The true self is what you want to bring into your world. If there's a self in the world made up of thoughts and images and generational patterns from carbon-based memory, and you've been taught to identify with that, one of the first things to do is going to be to work toward giving up identification with that and dismantling that false self. The self that goes, oh, terror, trauma, pain, drama. That's what needs to be forgiven. That's a false construct. And the thing to get is, yes, somebody would say, well, but this was so terrible what happened in the world. Of course I would be disturbed or upset. Well, that seems to be the order of things. But actually, the reverse is true. If I hold the terror and trauma, then energetically, I am a vote for terror and trauma in the world just by holding the mind energy of that terror trauma. And so bringing the true self into physiology, you come into an experience of who you are as love. And the mind is going to the mind is always going to play this game of trying to explain everything, trying to figure everything out. Remember, our starting point with the codependence work is the number one pseudo solution of the non-being mind is if I could just figure this out. So the mind will make a million feeble experiences or feeble explanations to try to explain. And to recognize that trying to put the experience of being into the 8 inches between your ears so that your brain, so that your mind can understand it, is like trying to put a 12-foot 2x4 between your ears. It doesn't go, can't comprehend it, can't contain it, can't even conceive of it. Remember the scriptures, they said, the eye has not seen, nor the ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man. Now, what is life? Life, we've spoken about this before, is love flowing through a cell. Whatever moves in you that inhibits life from moving in your cellular structure is your work. That's the work of forgiveness. So, trying to explain the magnificence of life instead of living the experience of it, trying in vain to figure it out, is just futile. The mind must be laid aside. The whole objective of this process is to lay the mind aside, not destroy it, not get rid of it, but lay it aside so that it becomes your footstool. It becomes your servant rather than your master. And when the mind is out of the way, I mentioned the other day, Emerson, that get your bloated nothingness out of the way, get it out of the way of the divine circuits. And forgiveness shows, a la first century Aramaic Yeshua, precisely how to put the mind aside. So that correction, and only the active presence of love can bring that correction, can be done in the thing you call your body, your nervous system. And that then fulfills what Yeshua said he was here for. What did he say? I come to bring you life and bring it more abundantly. But if there's no room, because the mind is filled with generations of unresolved fear and hostility, childhood mistreatment, generational and cultural pain, assaults, grief, rage, hatred, self-deprecation, confusion, vengeance, those things shrivel and distort the experience of life. And if you only experience it through the mind and you haven't resolved those things, then the experience of life is going to be shriveled. And for most people, these distorting energetic patterns tend to run our lives, and they've got to be faced and undone. Elsewise, we live in a replicate life. We're playing out the generations. We're not creating anymore. We're simply replicating the past. So getting honest and true with what lies hidden and unresolved in your own mind, in your own body, in your own nervous system, energies that are physiologically and psychologically damaging need to be faced. Face and remove it. What blocks the experience of self is love. Correct whatever's in the mind that covers up that experience. Now, this is the place to bring in the reminder from Carl Jung. Until the unconscious becomes conscious, it will run your life and you will call it fate. Correct what is in the mind that covers over the experience of truth, and you, conscious, active, present love, show up as the fuel in your own physiology, your own nervous system. The false self is trying to create a correction out of the errors. That's why Yeshua is, to me, the brilliant mind, the brilliant being that came up with this. Oh, here's what you have to do. You have to collapse what the mind is doing in order for correction to take place, in order to access what's in the unconscious. So that false self has to be removed. Yeshua referred to that as it dying. And then you get to experience that you are the correction. It is the presence of your human life. And you've got to make an opening, which, if we look historically, how long has it been since anybody in any of our bloodlines ever had even a peephole of an opening in their physiology for love to enter when the experiences of life were so traumatic? Being the presence of love is the correction. That's the fulfillment. And from there, healing is automatic. You remember Rumi, 13th century Sufi poet, said, "Love is the cure. Your pain will give birth to more pain. In you and in the world will give birth to more pain until your eyes exhale love as effortlessly as your body yields its scent." So whatever you say, I'm feeling afraid, I'm feeling frustrated, I'm feeling angry, I'm feeling annoyed, I'm feeling lonely, I feel aversion, I realize I'm coming from my wounds, I'm blaming others, blaming myself, I'm unable to hold to the mind of love in me. That is, every one of those circumstances is an opportunity to heal the pain constructs of one's own mind, body, and nervous system. But what does the non-being mind do with that? It says, oh, somebody out there did it to me. There's the dedicated membership of the one world universal religion of blame. As long as I hold unresolved pain or trauma within, that energy lies within me as a moving field of energy that is going to tend to resonate or draw someone with a matching energy into interaction with me. And if that person shows up and triggers the dissociated hidden energies, then I will use that energy of trauma to build my brain's perceptual construct of them and really truly believe that they are the cause. So the mind's trauma or pain-based interpretation of events appears to be the truth, but it directly leads in the opposite direction, directly leads away from truth. Most, many, perhaps all of our wounds, especially the repeated ones, the ones we say, why is this happening to me again, are rooted in genetically inherited traumas, multi-generational assaults, reinforced through unconscious action generation after generation, stored and repeated ad nauseum. And each pain perception, because we've got a different goal driving the process and perhaps a different object of attention in the world, the mind shows us that they're all different circumstances, different situations. But the trauma itself that's projected into those images is the same over and over and over again. And that trauma, especially when denied and therefore projected into our brain's image of others, obscures the subtle, literally permanently available experience of ourselves as conscious, active, present love. These blocks are never imposed from the outside. They're internal, they're removable. Of course, if you've got the technology to do it, and that's the objective of this work, is to understand and share the technology for doing that. But the whole process is a strictly inside job, because the perceptual constructs of our mind are replicating or repeating the patterned energy that's held within us. Until these generational traumas are removed, they're going to play out as power person dynamics and will easily be tricked into believing the false pictures and perceptions generated by our mind, if that's the world we live in. As long as we believe that something outside of us is cause rather than just the trigger of what is moving within, then we'll inhabit a world of lies. So feelings do not come from seeing or experiencing something. They come from mind energy moving within the structure. Yes, resonated by the experiences. But if it tears you out of love, if there's something in your physiology that tears you out of awareness of yourself as love, that's where the tool needs to be applied, pardon me. So giving up this, even if we never use the word blame, just the thought, look at what that's doing to me. Thinking, speaking as though something outside of us is the cause of what's moving inside. It's the denial that causes instant dissociation, which means the hiding of the truth of what's going on and replacing it with a mental construct, a perceptual construct. So it takes the changing of these old familial, put that word together, family, familial, familiar habits of mind that are just under the surface, ready to distort our experiences of ourselves and of life. And if anyone has a thought or question, we're past the halfway point. And so just having a thought, if anyone has a question, comment, something you'd like support with, push that call button and let's see if we can answer you. I'm going to just, I'm going to, what I was told, with the owner yesterday is if I shut the app down for a second and come back on, if somebody raised their hand, I'll be able to see them. And that worked yesterday. So if you're out there and listen, man, and you've got a thought or a question, I'm just going to take a moment and shut the app down, see if there's a hand up. So if you've got a hand to put up, go ahead and do it now, and then we'll see if I can see you when I come back. The app, and I don't see anyone. It did allow me to take a look, but okay. Well, then we'll just keep rocking on. So this literally, most people inhabit this world of perception, and what we do, Carl Jung laid it out very beautifully. Whatever we reject, whatever we cannot embrace in our soul, in our being, whatever we can't embrace in the active, out of the space of the active presence of love, will then appear in the perceptual mind as an event. And because most people's focus when pain is moving is out there, the mind will show them a construct as though the external world is the cause of the event. Jung goes on to say we meet ourselves, of course, in our projections on others, time and again, in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. Everything that appears to irritate us about others, anything that appears to cause us to be enraged or saddened, or that we say that makes me, Carl Jung says, can lead to understanding of oneself. So getting rid of victimhood becomes the key. Whatever your why is happening to me again experience is, recognize that the reason you're feeling it is because it's inside of you and it's coming from your mind. So rather than you made me mad, you hurt me, you made me sad, I just need to start to change my language. Oh, instead of saying, if only you would change, I wouldn't go through this. I want to move into my own mind and have a conversation in me because I'm going through this, because this is in me. Though my mind has turned the energy behind it into pictures of you. And of course, life is relentless. If we are in a disease condition, life is going to keep coming and knocking on the door and showing us what we are causing our diseases with. Because you're directing the show. So life's purpose, if we dissociate from our pain, whether it's through denial, whether it's through drug, alcohol, you know, uh, junk food, sugar, caffeine, nicotine, in order not to feel, life's purpose is to resonate, hone right in on that energy and show it to us. So the veil of the temple, if one is ever going to change their experience, must be, as Yeshua said 2,000 years ago, or actually it may not have been Yeshua, but they spoke of the veil of the temple must be rent in twain. This barrier between the subconscious and the unconscious mind must be opened. And until it's opened, whatever we've denied, whatever we've dissociated from, will be hidden from us. Our objective is to get into a safe enough space to allow it to open. So what forgiveness does is it uncovers, and then through the breath, delivering the active presence of love into tissue, dissolves, transmutes, removes whatever it is that we have hidden from ourselves and created an unconscious mind with. The pretense that forgiveness was an outer directed act took this possibility away. Anybody who bought into it, but when I wake up to the truth of who I am and I apply that forgiveness tool, then things change. So almost everybody's been convinced of this slippery lie. They were supposed to let somebody else off the hook for what's going on inside of us. And once one buys into that, they've just given away the technology with which to address and remove what never belonged. Applying that tool of forgiveness, even though we're not fully aware of it, when the energy that is locked into the associated pain is given just an instant to move, then it transforms each moment that's moving in us. So when one lives in this state of denial and then, with food, with drugs, with alcohol, whatever, those things of the culture, we've created this internal unconscious powerhouse that expresses and expresses and expresses in their lives. And most people are locked into that because, one, every time they feel something, somebody else is to blame. And two, they think that what they should do is let that other person off the hook. Never, ever forgive anybody for anything, but learn to forgive continuously. You might remember the Greek character Sisyphus, and this character was given, in Greek mythology, it was given he was given an endless, impossible task to complete, and that's a brilliant insight. That Sisyphean task that is impossible to ever complete. And if you remember Greek mythology, this guy was given the job of rolling this huge stone up a hill. And when you get to the top of the hill, the stone would roll back down the hill, and he had to go and roll it back up the hill, and it would roll back down on its own. And he could never get it to the top and keep it there. As long as you believe in Greek forgiveness, letting other people off the hook, it will seem like the impossible dream. And that's what most of humanity is engaged in. And if they're not engaged in trying to do this thing of forgiving others, resolving the blame that they hold by quote unquote forgiving others, then they're wasting their time in trying to be forgiven. You don't want to be forgiven for anything. Yes, if somebody holds a grudge against you because, maybe you did something that was really off the wall, something that was really inappropriate, then yes, it's very appropriate to seek being pardoned for that. I did it. I own it. I apologize for it. I'm going to do something different than that in the future, and I ask you to pardon me. But as far as the forgiveness aspect goes, I'm going to go inside myself and clean up that part of my own mind. So this wasting your time trying to be forgiven, forget it. The Creator isn't going to forgive you for anything because the Creator's never judged you. That's all on one's own back. That's and this idea that we've been condemned, we've been rejected by the Creator is a man-made fantasy. And it's the real, this is the real true Greek tragedy. This myth about forgiveness has taken over the world. And what that means is actual forgiveness has been disappeared. This single error, which focuses people's attention on the outer world, voids one's ability to explore and clean up their own inner world. And the reason it's the Sisyphean task is because it guarantees perpetual suffering, because it binds people to repeating the unresolved generational issues that remain unfaced and hidden within. Again, Carl Jung's brilliant insight. You got to make the unconscious conscious. How do you do it? Forgiveness is how it's done. There's a philosopher named George Santana, 19th century um, Spanish philosopher. And he had a way of, and I came across this recently, like, whoa, this guy's really got it. And he's right there in line with Jung. And, you know, he explains the infantile expressions of what appear to be grown men, you know, grown women, dictators, abusers of all stripes. People who can't maintain adult relationships, those who operate as destructive forces in humanity. And here's what he says: progress, far from consisting in change, depends on retentiveness. When change is absolute, there remains no being to improve, and no direction is set for possible improvement. When experience is not retained, as among savages, infancy is perpetual. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. I would adjust that just slightly. Those who cannot process the past, those who cannot open, embrace those energetic patterns from the generations, because maybe they just seem to be too gigantic, too traumatic, too big to deal with. And that's the basic message of the non-being mind. And Dawn says, it's funny that you mentioned Sisyphus. I felt like oh, Dawn, ouch, the reincarnation of Sisyphus so many times in my life. Getting close to the top so many times and having it all crash down again. That's the story of humanity. That's why people that's why the abusers, we look at the abuse going on in the world. That's why the abuser's abusing, because there is no accomplishment. And then comes the greed that says, well, if I could just have this. I shared, I think last week, and it's a perfect place here, because ultimately one of the keys is to turn it over. Jump on YouTube and do a search for the song Carry Me. And just let yourself breathe to that song. And it speaks of the greed in the world and how the individual singing the song is like, I just can't do it. Carry me through this world. And I've found it to be, just getting into the music of that particular piece, a really powerful way to soften, embrace, and stand in willingness to be supported, truly supported by Ruka. Otherwise, as Santana says so perfectly, infancy is perpetual. Those who can never accomplish that tend to end up in that state of infancy their whole lives long. So this slippery twist of letting others off the hook for what's generated by one's own mind, rather than taking responsibility and removing those things, forgiving those things, then they become projected generational content over and over and over again. And the breath is a big key in the whole process. It is those dissociated energies that cover over and block awareness of who we are as beings literally structured from love. And outer events can't block that. That the blocking of that is something that's internal. Outer directed acts don't bring correction for internally generated dynamics. But really, truly, with willingness, inviting that power that in Aramaic was called rukudukudsha, in using that forgiveness tool with integrity, creates a visceral opening that literally facilitates the flow of light and love into every instant of your life, every experience of your life, and throughout your physiology. And when that shift takes place, that's when the whole, your why is this happening to me again? That's when the whole universe gets up, shifts 180 degrees around you, and you couldn't create that experience again if you tried. So it doesn't matter whether it's alone or lonely, afraid or sad, rageful, hateful. Through forgiveness, the space is created for actual, active, present love, even if just for an instant, to flow into, remember what the Course called it, that clean and open space within your mind. And the transmutation, the removal of that energy of pain happens in that instant of actual forgiveness. So lived pain or turmoil is always an invitation to end denial. I suggest you make a commitment to yourself and you commit to doing 5 worksheets a day for the next 40 days. Go through that 40-day cycle. This song, the author of the song Carry Me and the singer, it's an unusual Asian name, Snatum, I believe, is the name. If you don't find it, Dawn, send me a text and I'll send you a link to it. But I believe it's spelled Snatam. Kaur, Kaur, if I remember correctly. So realizing that the mind is a device that converts thoughts into pictures, literally the world we think we see with our eyes, it's a hologram, and it's nothing but a projection of the mind. We don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. And there's no life in that hologram. Neuroscientist Anil Seth says it this way: perception is a mental construct generated by the mind-body nervous system. The whole world we think we see is an hallucination unique to each person. And then he goes on to say, when we agree on our shared hallucinations, we call it reality. Collapsing perception is the core answer to all of life's challenges. So if you think of your body mind unit as an instrument, as you do your work, you're upgrading the instrument. If I've got a $10 transistor radio, I can tune in on the FM dial to Mozart, and I can listen to Mozart on that $10 transistor radio. If I have $100,000 stereo system over here and I tune into that same station, I'm going to have a slightly different experience. Like, you can't hear Mozart on a $10 transistor radio. And in the same way, our metaphor of the antenna with the arms bent, if If hostility or fear resides anywhere within the structure, then there is not room for the flow of active present love, and human life is voided. Or at least I shouldn't say it's voided, because it's always there, shiny and new, but it's glossed over. The experience of it is lost. It's like the $10 transistor radio. Instead of a high quality, accurate sound, we get this poor quality, noisy, scratchy. Gee, that's supposed to be Mozart. But making the space for inviting the presence of love in the instant when one cancels a goal, knowing that there is literally an elemental force in you that will assist with that process and will directly teach you if you will give it the attention it needs. There has to be the willingness to listen to it, to attune to that energy. And it's not going to be listening in the sense of the way your ears hear words. We call that listening. We're talking about a different kind of listening. What the world calls listening, what the world calls seeing, are cheap copies of what the real thing is. So when the mind's using corrupt data to build its projections rather than reflecting accurate information from actuality, that becomes habitual in form. And the work is about rebuilding your form, reforming it so that it is a proper receiver for the energy in which you live, move, and have your being. When we use corrupt data, the mind massages its unconscious content into pictures that, I mean, it looks like something out there. And seeing as how I see it and I'm feeling this at the same time, that must be what's causing it. It's a challenge to quit the one world universal religion of blame. And it can be helpful to remember that all perception, no matter how accurate it seems, no matter how vivid the picture, is made up by us. And everything that shows up there is autobiographical. It tells us about what's inside of us first. What it tells us might be true about what's going on out there also, but by the fact that it shows up in your mind, you know it's true about some form of energy inside of you. And those energies can be removed. They can be forgiven. If you need a bird's eye view of this principle, I'd suggest jumping on our YouTube channel and look for the video, What is the World? It's a lesson from A Course in Miracles. I still watch it. I did it, that video, probably 10 years ago, maybe not quite that long, 7 years ago, something like that. And it's about 32 minutes long. And I still watch it from time to time and get new insights from it, even though I originally did it. But what is the world? It's a powerful lesson from A Course in Miracles. And each time you apply forgiveness, it takes on a new life, a new level at which understanding and the usefulness of the tools becomes real. And our deepest hope is that these tools are coming to you in a format that makes so much sense that you're just inclined to do it and move forward into your true human life. And know that we're here to hold the space for you and support you in doing that. You're appreciated. Have the best year yet of your eternal life. It is an awesome gift to give the world. Blessings.